What is going on, everybody, and welcome back. Once again, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to thank you guys for joining me for another replay battle. Today I've got something that has been conspicuously absent from the channel since the mod has been released. This is Rise of Mordor. Today I've got a 4 versus 4 battle coming to you from Blood Magpie, so a big thank you to him. He is also the, I believe he's the lead developer of the sub-mod that we're going to be using, which is the Battle Overhaul sub-mod. It's going to be linked for you guys down in the description. It adds everything. A new kind of schema of balance, it adds new factions, new units, expands on the ones that already exist. It is absolutely, in my opinion, essential if you want to play Rise of Mordor in multiplayer in a serious way. And honestly, that's the only thing available to you right now when you play Rise of Mordor, so you don't got a lot of choice. So get this mod as soon as you can get your hands on it. And yeah, without any further ado, let's get into the army comps and then finally into the replay itself. I hope you guys enjoy it. Now, the first army we're going to look at today is the forces of the Easterlings, being commanded by, I'm not entirely sure, we'll have to see at the end of the match. But before we get into the army comps, let's talk a little bit about the tier distinctions, because they are different. This mod, from what I understand, it's intuitive to get into. If you're used to Reforge, then you will be able to pick this up pretty quickly, but there are some very fine distinctions between the tiers that I think they bear consideration, and I want to relay those to you from my conversation with Blood Magpie earlier today. So there's 3 tiers, of course, like Levy, and then there's Trained, and then there's Elite, which is your low, mid, and high tiers, respectively. And the Levy units tend to be very specialized, so they do one thing really well, or reasonably well, but they're not generalists. And from what I've seen of the Levy units, they tend to be quite lightly armored as well, so they are very vulnerable, so you want to use them in support or against other Levy units. Yeah, usually support. You want to have all your units working together, take that combined arms approach. It's so strong in all Total War games that you really can't afford not to if you can help it. And then you've got, let's find a mid-tier unit, and let's talk a little bit more about them. So you've got a mid-tier unit here, like the Kagan's Guardsmen, which is like, I believe they're part of the Variag contingent in the Easterling army. Now, mid-tiers tend to have a bit higher base damage than your elite units. So, for example, Gondor, which is basically the standard, and everybody else just deviates up and down in certain areas, depending on Gondor. Your average swordsman is going to have 40, I believe it's melee damage, and then 4 extra AP damage, whereas a higher tier unit will have around, say, 33 damage, but they'll have 6 AP damage and higher melee attack skills and things like that. So they will be able to attack, not faster, they will be able to be more likely to hit, and they'll be causing more damage when they do hit. So while the mid-tier units do have that base, that higher base, it really doesn't help them, I think, in the way that if you just look at it and go, oh, that's higher, the mid-tier units are obviously better, then there's no reason to take elites. So there are some fine distinctions in there, and I really like the way that Attila stats work for that reason. There's a lot that you can do in Attila with stats that you can't do in Reforged, and some really subtle distinctions that you can make that I think really benefit the game. But in any case, I'm going on, and I'm just going crazy with this. So over here we got some dragon skin heavy infantry regiments. Now, as I said, the elite units tend to have a little bit lower base damage, but they've got that extra armor piercing and the higher chance to hit, so they will consistently do damage more than your mid-tier units, and they are significantly more expensive as well to try and balance that out. The Rune player also brought some Dragon's Fire heavy bowmen. Got 1 unit there, 1 unit there, and I think there's a 3rd hanging out over here. Well, what do you know? There's 4 of them, in fact. A lot of elite bowmen here. More Eastrawn Warband, some more Kagan's Guard. I believe to the tune of about 2 of those pike units. Now we have one of my favorite units, and if you guys watch my content, you know that I love hybrid units. I love the versatility that units like that afford you. It just gives you so many options. It can really. It really makes your opponent, like, you know, makes them wonder how you're gonna hit them, because you can do so many things with these hybrid units, and this is very much a strong hybrid unit. They got some really nice armor here. They've also got bows and 2-handed axes. Now, a bit on 2-handed weapons. There are some distinctions between the different 2-handed weapons, but in general, they do have higher AP bonuses, and they usually have a bonus versus infantry. So very, very strong against infantry units, great for breaking up formations, but of course, given that they don't have shields, it's a lot of defense that they're missing, so bow units are very effective against them. And these guys, while they have this really nice heavy mail, I imagine it's probably not the heaviest kind of armor, so they're like a nice bow/shock unit. I know everything is really mixed up, so I'm just going to call things out as we see them and explain a little bit about them. We've got some Vineland Patrollers here, which is like a medium-tier bow unit for Dorwinion, which is a new faction. Normally they're baked into Dale, and I believe Dale still has access to a few Dorwinion units, but Darwinian is its own faction in this submod. Hidden in here as well, we've got some half-orc axemen. Where are they? Ah, they are so beautiful. The half-orcs being the regiments in Saruman's army that nearly killed and, well, I should say mortally wounded Theoden's son, Theodred, at the Battle of the Forts of Izens. This is a really iconic unit for Isengard, wearing that Uruk-hai Raider outfit, and I absolutely love them. I'm glad that they got included in the mod. I'm not sure if they're part of the submod or if they're part of the base mod, but in any case, you have access to them. And back here we have some more units from Isengard, one of their cav units. This is the Dunlending Horse Raiders. I believe they're a Jav cav unit. Yeah, I don't see any bows in there. It seems really easy to make the Dunlendings and to make them believable. I mean, you just take the dirtiest man you can find, throw some furs on him, and voila, you've got some Dunlendings. But yes, definitely adds a lot to the Isengard roster, who didn't really have any cavalry previous, I believe, to this submod. Got some more Vineland Patrollers over here. And then we've got some Uruk-hai Crossbowmen. Yes, indeed. Take a good look at him with that distinctive helmet. There's some Berserkers in there as well. Love it. The very iconic unit. These ones, I believe, were both done by the Rise of Mordor team. And yeah, as soon as you get Rise of Mordor, you'll have access to them without needing the submod. Over here we have, these are not Kelduin Guildsmen, these are White Hand Stormers from Isengard. And aesthetically, they seem to have a lot in common with the units like the Blackwatch Legion or something. They have those massive shields, so a lot of shield value. They're probably not very easy to shoot down from the front, given their heavy armor and those gigantic shields. And I imagine, well, heavy units in general tend to be higher mass, but these guys, I bet you anything, are much higher mass than normal. And mass works a little bit differently in Attila than it does in Reforged. Now, of course, much like Reforged, well, Medieval 2, I should say. Mass is useful for bullying units out of the way, but there are downsides to being a high mass unit. So if you're charging into units like halberds or pikemen, the high mass is actually going to make you take more damage if you charge into them from the front when those units are braced. So there is a trade-off to it. So definitely it's something that you need to be aware of tactically when you're using your units and picking your matchups and things like that. Out in front here, we have some of the Uruk-hai infantry who are just gorgeous. You guys have probably seen these guys on like Jackie Fish's channel, Pixelated Apollo's channel. You've seen them all over the place, but they just don't get old. A beautiful unit here. Isengard, I believe, is they've got some exceptionally high armor values. Like they've got very similar armor values to Gondor, who is like from what I understand, the gold standard of armor. And yeah, very, very deadly units. Got some Kelduin Guildsmen mixed in with the White Hand Stormers. They remind me a lot of the Merchant Militia, both in the way that they're armored and the fact that they're kind of like a mid-tier unit. So yeah, I feel like I understand pretty well how that unit would be deployed. Over here we have some Vineland Guards who are just sexy. Look at this. Now, obviously in Rise of Mordor and in Lord of the Rings modding in general, Peter Jackson's movies have had a huge impact on the way that modders make their units. A lot of people are really enthusiastic about the movies and getting them into the game, but then you come across gems like this, and it's just totally out there. It is not inspired by anything that we've seen in Peter Jackson's movies, and it's a real freaking treat. I love the way these guys look. It's very unique, very almost elven in a lot of ways, and I think that's probably what the team are going for. In the back here we have the Paladins of the Vintner Court, who are mixing, I believe they're mixing some of the assets from the, obviously from the Vineland Guard units, but they've also got some like medieval sallets and things like that on. It's like a German sallet, like a Gothic kind of German style sallet. And I believe that there's a lot of assets in this game from 1212. Blood Magpie is a big fan of 1212 as well, so that would not surprise me in the least. But we got some more Vinland Guards over here, some more Uruk-hai infantry, some Vinland Outriders. I think these are just shock infantry. Oh, they're melee cavalry, so interesting. They do seem to have lances, but maybe those are spears. Like I said, I don't really understand the cavalry distinctions very well at the moment, but it is something that I will learn a little bit more about. But yeah, 2 units here of the Vineland Outriders, a couple units here of the Kelduin Hunters, which is a light bow infantry unit. They do have shields, so I imagine they're a little bit tankier, a little bit better than their lightly armored exterior would suggest as standing up to arrow fire, but again, not 100% sure. The levy units generally tend to be good at one thing, and it could be that this unit is just good at being fodder. They're exceptionally resilient, but again, I don't know. We'll find out as I play more of Rise of Mordor. Behind them, we have some Vinland's sentries, not securities, who, well, they're a medium infantry, so they're going to be fairly decent at what they do. Base damage of 40, and of course that 4 armor piercing as well, but not nearly as specialized as some of the more elite units tend to be in that role. Got some more White Hand Stormers here, some Keldwin Foresters, which is a cheaper axe unit, and I think I've mentioned this already, but Doronian really seems to be built around numbers and efficiency rather than a hardened and elite core that you can see in units, or in factions rather, like Dol Amroth, for example, who don't have a ton of infantry options, but they really are quite strong and very, very good at what it is that they do, but they do tend to have a little bit lower numbers. But in any case, moving on, we got some Keldwin Hunters in there as well, another unit of Keldwin Hunters, some Keldwin Hirelings, which is a militia tier spear unit, got some Half-Orc Axemen in there, mixed in there as well, some Dunlending Horse Raiders, more Half-Orc Axes, some more Vinland Yard Patrollers. Then we move on to Harad and some of the really cool, exciting units that are, I think, mostly done by the creators of this submod. There are a few Haradrim units, of course, that we've all seen throughout the development process of Rise of Mordor, but a lot of those assets have been branched out and kind of diversified and mixed with some of the assets, I believe, from 1212, possibly some other mods as well, to create a brand new roster for Harad. So here we have some Red Sand Skirmishers, which is a trained light skirmisher unit, and many of the Haradrim units tend to be quite lightly armored, but they do have extra charge bonus, and I think they get some extra damage as well. So it's very, very similar to how Harad functions in Reforged. So if you guys understand how Harad works in Reforged, you should be able to pick up that faction pretty well easily in Rise of Mordor using the Battle Overhaul submod. But in any case, we got some Red Sand Marksmen over here with a little bit of shields, but otherwise very lightly armored. Yet more Red Sand Marksmen, a big line, in fact, of the Red Sand Marksmen. I think we're looking at like 4 or so units of them. In the back we have Serpent Guard. Everyone is, I'm sure, going to be very happy to see these units included in this Battle Overhaul submod. Now, I have seen some conceptual work that the Rise of Mordor team has done, so it is entirely possible that they may come out with their own units of Serpent Guard in the future. But for the time being, I think that these units are pretty acceptable. Thematically, they're very appropriate. It looks like they were taken from maybe one of the Eastern factions in 1212. But in any case, Lances of the Serpent, heavy melee cavalry, apparently, not the shock units that you might be used to in Reforged. Over here we have some Champions of Far Harad, who are terrifying with those, like, almost like childlike cherubim faces, but of course they've got like facial hair and stuff on them, so they're not like young children. But damn, they are scary. And I think, given the look of some of their weapons, they might have a little bit higher armor piercing than you'd expect from a sword unit. Moving on over here, we have some Spears of the Serpent, so some Serpent Guard variants. A couple units there of the Spears of the Serpent. Then we got some Swords of the Serpent as well, and they've got some interesting swords, very Eastern looking. It really serves well to differentiate them from the sword units of, say, a Western faction like Gondor. Out in front we got some Haradrim swordsmen, which I believe are going to be constituting the second line, and they're going to be backed up with some tribesmen of Far Harad, who have got these big wicker shields, very almost Persian-like, in at least in the portrayals of Persians that I've seen in a lot of medieval games like 1212, for example. So I imagine they've got some pretty decent shield values, but otherwise pretty low armor, I would expect from a faction like Harad. So I think that just about does it. And we got some Berserkers out here as well from Isengard. I think that just about does it for Team Blue. Let's go ahead and let's see what Team Red has brought to the battle today. Across the field from Harad, we have a faction that is probably their polar opposite in terms of how they play and just generally their stat breakdown across the board. We have Dol Amroth, which is really exciting. I know that with the limited resources, it can be pretty difficult to differentiate a faction like Dol Amroth from their feudal overlords. Gondor, you don't want to make them look too similar and things like that. Especially since the Dol Amroth units were previously rolled into the Gondor roster, there is going to be a lot of kind of runoff in terms of the assets that get used for them. But I think that the mod team behind this has done a really good job at differentiating them. But in any case, out in front here we have some Amrothian archers, well trained, of course, with their they've got decent armor, some nice like solid helmets there. They make a decent medium tier bowman. Got some Black Swan defenders over here, which I think are modeled off of the Black Swan Vanguard from Reforged, although I could be wrong about that because there is actually a Black Swan Vanguard unit, which is going to be over here. They're AP as well as the Black Swan Vanguards are in Reforged, and the Black Swan defenders, I imagine, are just a a sword and board variant of them that don't quite have as high armor piercing. Got a second unit here of the Black Swan Vanguards. And we've got some Knights of the Silver Swan as well, who function, I believe, as a heavy lancer unit. Indeed, they are a shock cavalry unit in this submod. Got a couple of units of them over here as well. I think we've got another 2 units, so there's a lot of Knights of the Silver Swan here, as you would expect from a faction like Dol Amroth. They're going to bring a ton of their very strong cavalry. Some more Amrothian archers, some Black Swan Vanguard. I don't think there's any hidden units in here. I think, in fact, we can see the hidden units pretty well. So let's move on now to Gondor. I think there's only one Gondorian faction on the field today. And we've got some armed citizenry who are interesting. They're a militia tier unit. Obviously, they're just a little bit of fodder here, and they'll be useful for getting themselves dead in the place of more important units, like, say, the Gondor Spear Infantry. Now, these are assets from the Rise of Mordor team, and damn does it show. Look at that detail. Absolutely fantastic work from those guys. But yeah, one unit here of the Gondor Spearmen, another unit in behind them, and that's not the Gondor Cavalry at all. We've got some Black Swan Defenders mixed in here as well, I think from the second Amroth faction that's here. Got some Gondor Sword Infantry, rank upon rank of these heavily armored swordsmen. Out in front we have some Wardens of the White Tower, which I think this was modeled on the Reforged unit, although the Wardens of the White Tower, of course, are from other submods entirely. But I think when Blood Magpie was looking at these guys and how he wanted them to kind of play and fit into the Gondor roster, I believe the inspiration for that came from the equivalent unit in Reforged. But in any case, I think there's 2 units at least of the Wardens of the White Tower. Some more Gondor Sword Infantry over here as well. Some Coastal Garrison, which I believe is a unit for... Actually, that's from Gondor as well. I thought it was an Amroth unit because of their color. Out in front, we've got some more Amrothian archers. A lot of archers here. I've not really seen any Gondor archers at all. I think they seem to be... They might just be relying on Dol Amroth to play more of a support role with their cavalry and their archers, because, well, Amroth just has more options in terms of their cavalry units, for example. So I could see them making a good support faction. But in any case, more Gondor Sword Infantry, more Wardens of the White Tower, more Coastal Garrison, a 3rd company of Wardens of the White Tower, a lot of heavy-hitting elite units on the field today. 2 units of the... Actually, no, just 1 unit of the Gondor Spears. Nope, never mind, there's 2 right here. And then behind we got some more Black Swan Vanguards. And then we get into the... I think this is Rovania. No, not Rovania, this is going to be Dorwinian. So we are going to have a Dorwinian faction opposite them. Or maybe it's Dale. Yeah, I think Dale still has some of the Rovanian and Dorwinian factions. So this is going to be Dale. We've got some Rovanian regents who I think previous to this submod being released were some of the best heavy cavalry in the game. I don't really know how they stack up now, but I'm sure they're still very good. Some shock cavalry here from Dale's, the Dale cavalry regiments. Surprisingly well armored. A little bit different, I suppose, than the Dale and Reforged. Another unit there of the Rovanian regents, which is where the general's bodyguard is going to be hanging out for Dale. And then we've got some shipmen who are like a medium tier kind of sword and board infantry, a little bit less armor, I think, than some of the more regular Dale army units, but got some more Knights of the Silver Swan mixed in there as well, 2 companies of them. And then out in front, got some Violent Yard patrollers. So maybe we do have Dorwinian here as well. No, they're Dale. I guess Dale just has still has access to a lot of the Dorwinian units. A lot of Vineland units in the back as well. Some Vineland guards here. 1, 2 units, 3 units of Vineland guards. So a lot of really hard-hitting heavy infantry. And over on the other wing, got some more Dale cavalry, some shock units here, and another unit of the Rovanian region. So the army's looking very, very nicely balanced against one another. I'll definitely give the cavalry advantage to Dol Amroth and to Gondor and to Dale as well. But yeah, that does it for the army comps. Let's go ahead. Let's jump into the replay. Hope you guys enjoy it. So taking a brief look at the order of battle here before things really start to kick off, we can see that troops from both sides have really just stretched themselves out to the entire limit of the battlefield, which is something that happens in a large 4v4 game like this. And I find in Attila in general, people tend to use up the entire battlefield. Well, that's not necessarily going to be the case in games of Medieval 2, for example. And I guess maybe that has to do with the size of the maps that are available for Attila. But the obvious consequence of that is that it really limits the mobility of your cavalry. You really only have one option, and that is to run straight at your enemy and to try and feint and to try and pull holes in their lines, or stretch holes in their lines as you pull away forces out of position and things like that, and try and get your enemy to chase you. So it's not necessarily worse than Medieval 2. It is just a different kind of tactical reality that you have to face up to when you play in Attila. But in any case, let's take a quick look here, a little bit more detailed look at the positions of each team. There's some really big gaps in the blue team line, which could potentially be exploited by the very numerous cavalry of the red team. But it doesn't look like anyone is really too keen on being aggressive at this point. And that could have to do with just the sheer number of some really strong skirmishing units on the part of the blue team, and also given that the red team has, I think, longer range skirmishers than many of the blue team units, like these crossbows here, for example. So they could just be relying on that kind of tactical advantage that the extra range does afford them before instead of moving forward and trying to be the aggressor, because it is definitely it's dangerous when you are the aggressor. There are a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong, and of course there are some possibilities for ambush here for the red team as well. As you can see, if you look at some of the unit cards here, a lot of these Gondorian units are hidden. Now, it is to be assumed that there is a presence in the woods, of course, because why would there not be? You can only see so much of the Gondorian army, and they can't have just brought the things that the blue team is able to see at the moment. But yeah, I have to say the red team has a really comfortable defensive position, and they have an advantage in both ranged units and I would say in cavalry as well. In terms of their advantage in ranged units, it really comes down to the amount of range that they have for the blue team. So it's really going to be down to the blue team, I think, in this instance, to make the first move. For the time being, it looks like everyone is just going to kind of just chill here and sit around and weigh up their options. So let's go ahead and let's fast forward just a little bit here until forces from each side begin to move forward. Yeah, still a little bit of shifting going around here in terms of the troop deployments, and it looks like now the blue team is going to seize this opportunity to begin to move forward. And over on this side, what do we got here? Some Dunlending horse raiders, some close quarters skirmish cavalry moving over onto the red team's right wing. I think that has to do with the fact that there aren't really any bowmen necessarily over here that could cause some problem. But the red team is in the process of moving some of them in. We got some Vineland Yard patrollers here, a few companies of them taking positions a little bit closer to the cavalry so that they can get in there and support them. And this company right here is actually going to be really, really aggressive and move forward and hopefully maybe get some early harass off on the Dragon's Wrath warriors that are up here, and perhaps more significantly, the Dunlending horse raiders, who are a little bit less armored. Now let's see how the blue team responds to that. The Yard patrollers already beginning to open fire. It doesn't look like they've claimed the lives of any of these cavalry yet, but the blue team is going to respond in kind. They're going to pull back their Dragon's Wrath units. They don't want to commit everything here. They don't want to be baited into an impetuous charge that will really not be to their advantage ultimately. They're going to move forward with a couple units of the Dunlending horse raiders. Now, let's see what these guys accomplish. They're going to get really close to those Ravanian regents and try and bait them out of position, move them a little bit forward towards, say, some of the Keltwind hunters, maybe pull them out of position and ambush them with some of their own Dragon's Wrath heavy cavalry. But of course, in a chasing kind of scenario like this, but only if they can keep themselves moving, then Dunlending horse raiders can potentially do a lot of damage to heavily armored cavalry units. You can see they were already starting to accrue some casualties, but unfortunately they ended up getting caught out. That DL cavalry regiment is not going to chase these guys for too long, but the Dunlending horse raiders here really have, on the part of a micro mistake, I would say, by the blue team player, have really gotten themselves put into a tough position. Yeah, let's get down and dirty with it right now. Turn off the UI. Dunlending horse raiders not having a great time, and the Ravanian regents are going to pursue. Another volley from those fire arrows coming in, claiming the lives of, I think, some of the Dragon's Wrath. Now, they only got one of the Dunlending horse raiders, and they're going to countercharge now against the Ravanian regents, who have now switched their direction and are now moving back towards the safety of their own lines. But as these Dunlending horse raiders move forward, they are going to put themselves in danger. I mean, this is kind of the nature of lightly armored skirmish cavalry like this. They are going to have to kind of put themselves out there in order to bring value to their army. Ravanian regent's going to chase them, but they're not going to get so lucky a second time. And now a counter volley from the blue teams. I think this is the Keltwind hunters is going to go into the rear of that Ravanian unit. Not going to do any damage to them. They are quite heavily armored, and they do have a lot of health. But yeah, every little bit helps, just slowly chipping away at the health of that heavy cavalry unit. Vineland Yard patrollers firing into the Dunlending horse raiders. I think the other company didn't end up routing. We've got a unit here of the Keldwin Hunters that are moving forward to try and kind of contest things with the Violent Yard Patrollers a little bit, but I think Blood Magpie, who's the commander controller, who's going to be pulling them back towards his Violent Winekeepers, try and keep them a little bit more protected. Over here, that understrength company of the Dunlending Horse Raiders really paying back the Violent Yard Patrollers for the trouble that they've caused them, and that's going to force the Dalish player to commit forward with some of his shipmen. Meanwhile, this unit here of the Violent Yard Patrol is going toe-to-toe with, looks like some Easteron Archers, some Dragon's Fire heavy bowmen, and they're definitely going to have an advantage in terms of their survivability with their heavy armor. And you can see that it's really starting to take a toll on those Violent Yard Patrollers who are actually wavering because of that constant focus fire coming in. And I think I mentioned this in the army composition phase, that it is possible to rout units pretty easily in Attila if you can inflict a lot of casualties on them very quickly. Once they get to about half strength, it is very easy to make them flee and run away, even if they're not in any immediate danger. And there we are. We're going to see a little bit of braking here on the part of the Violent Yard Patrols, but there is some action going on the other side. We don't want to miss it. Looks like Knights of the Silver Swan have moved forward against the Lances of the Serpent, and Harad has moved in force with way more infantry and Dol Amroth as a result, especially because of some of the spears and some of these skirmish units as well. The men of Dol Amroth are finding themselves very, very hard pressed here to hold the line. I got some more Haradrim swords moving in there with some champions of Far Harad to surround a couple companies of the Knights of the Silver Swan. You can see them almost forming like a perfect circle here, just fighting basically back to back, unsupported. Meanwhile, Dol Amroth, I think, has realized their mistake here and is moving in with some of their elite infantry. Really, they don't have a ton of numbers, though, and a lot of these infantry units are very expensive. And this one is actually taking some casualties. I'm not too sure from what, but there's a significant amount of casualties to the tune of about a quarter of the unit there, so those are some big losses for the men of Dol Amroth. This Knights of the Silver Swan unit being focus fired down now by basically everything that the Haradrim can throw at it, because it does have the general in the unit, and if that guy goes down, it's not really going to go all that well for Harad. And here, Black Swan Vanguards, but to charge down the Spears of the Serpent. Now, I'm not intimately familiar with the dynamics of like that kind of rock, paper, scissors system that is in Attila, but I have a pretty sneaking suspicion that these Black Swan defenders, backed up with the Black Swan Vanguards, are going to be able to smash their way through these heavy swordsmen. But how long is it going to take? And meanwhile, while these guys are holding the line, it looks like they're forming themselves up into a shield wall formation here and slowly advancing on the men of Dol Amroth. But while they're holding the line, the Dol Amroth cavalry is being routed, and this pocket back here is being surrounded and completely destroyed. So Harad really does seem to have this well in hand for the time being. Let's pop over in here to the forest, where Gondor has taken up position. Very, very strong position here. We'll have heavily armored units on the front lines. And who are they facing off against? Well, none other than Isengard, who slowly but surely is moving their way forward into the forest in order to take the fight to Gondor. And we're going to see the lines there clash in just a few moments. But let's pop back on over to the other side, where it seems like Rovanion, or rather Dale, is really having a hard time here. The Easterlings have moved forward with support from Dorwinion, and they've set up a really nice line here of spears and swords, whereas there seems to be a lot of chaos going on in the Dor and the Dale line. I'm not going to be able to cease being confused by the Dale-Dorwinion split when they both have the same unit, so forgive me, it's going to happen a few more times, I'm sure. Vineland sentries charging their way into the coastal garrison. Let's go ahead and let's slow things down just a little bit here. We don't want to miss any action on other parts of the battlefield. Meanwhile, what do we have here? This is looking like a unit of the Rovanion sentries or regents that are exploiting a gap in the blue team's line. They may be able to get in behind these Vineland sentries and cut those traitors down, but more than likely they might be moving over here to try and support the Vineland guards who have been committed to battle against the I think these are the Kagan's guardsmen, so a pike unit, and some Vineland outriders as well. Over on this end, it looks like a unit of Vineland Winekeepers has got themselves thoroughly surrounded by both some... actually, no, this is one of the Dorwinion units. Okay, so I'm getting confused here. So the Dol Amroth, and I believe this is Dale, have managed to surround a unit of Vineland Keepers, and they're going to be able to rout that unit off of the battlefield pretty quickly, probably kill quite a lot of them, and that is going to compromise this section here of the Easterlings line. Now this Kagan's Guardsman unit very much out of position. You can see that their formation is not at all integral. And I'm sure the men of Dol Amroth and the Warriors of Dale are going to be able to exploit that to its fullest. Over here, got a couple units of cavalry, Dale cavalry regiments, 2 of them, in fact, pressing hard against the Dragon's Wrath, and the Dragon's Wrath are really struggling to hold these guys back. So things very much, I would say that they're relatively even. There are places where the blue team is winning, but there are also places where the red team seems to be pulling it back, especially over here. It looks like Blood Magpie got one of his units of cavalry surrounded by some spears, and a couple units here of the shipmen. So now the red team is definitely striking back over here on their right wing. But let's pop into the forest and check out this fight that I'm sure many of you are eager to see. So let's go ahead, kick it up to full speed. You can see reinforcements for Gondor pushing their way into the Uruk-hai. And actually, that's some of the Wardens of the White Tower who are going to be spearheading this attack against the blue team center. All along the line, just a bloody massacre in the forest here. But Gondor, given the numbers, really seems to have the edge. Now, there are some axemen in there that's going to help out a lot against the heavily armored men of Gondor, but the Uruk-hai really do seem to be on the back foot at this point, even outnumbered, which is very surprising. Looks like some Black Swan defenders moving in as well to support their ally in the center. And now the red team really seems to be pulling it back in the center and also over on their right wing, so things still very much in the balance. Over here, however, on the red team's left wing, well, you know what? Some reinforcements here. The Black Swan defenders have done really well. They've shattered that unit of Spears of the Serpent. We saw them fighting a little bit earlier. And the blue team seems to be in full retreat. So this is not going well for the blue team, it would appear. We got 10 minutes left on the timer, though. Let's see if the blue team can pull off something miraculous. Got some more reinforcements moving into the center. Some Kelduin foresters. They're going to be a welcome sight alongside the flagging Uruk-hai. And we might see a rout here. Another company of those half-orc axemen moving in alongside the Kelduin foresters. And it remains to be seen if all this AP here is really going to pay off against the men of Gondor, who are holding their own extremely well at this point. Another unit here of the Celtic foresters charging their way in support of some of the Uruk-hai. Over in the center, it looks like a couple companies here of some Athelian Rangers who I didn't see earlier were really giving the business to this small unit of Uruk-hai, and they're getting shot to pieces. They're actually kind of shaken, although they do now have some support in the form of the crossbows. Ooh, that guy just getting absolutely taken out by the Athelian Rangers. It looks like the Athelian Rangers are now turning their attentions onto this Uruk-hai crossbow unit, and it seems like they are firing actually into the flank now of these Gondorian infantry units, and hopefully that, for the red team at least, or for the blue team rather, that helps even out the fight in the center, because it seems to be a little bit one-sided at the moment. Over here, a little bit, if we're looking from the red team's perspective, a little bit right of center, you have some Kelduin guildsmen from Blood Magpie who are really giving it to the Black Swan defenders here. An elite unit of Dol Amroth infantry getting beaten back and routed off the field. And there are a lot of Amroth archers nearby that could potentially support them, but there's not really any other infantry, so this is a big hole that just opened up here in the red team's line. And remains to be seen what these Kelduin guildsmen decide to do, but it looks like they're going to come in from the flank here against the Black Swan vanguards, and I think some Black Swan defenders as well, and try and support this unit of Kelduin guildsmen. They're going to be getting in from behind. And of course, there's still a unit of the Vineland guards here as well, and they could be used to pursue those Amrothian archers. But it looks like Dol Amroth already on top of it. Got a formation here of the Knights of the Silver Swan that are charging their way into the Vineland guards. Let's see what these guys do. Nice charge here into the Kelduin guildsmen. That might help reverse the blue team's fortunes over on this end. And now those Amrothian archers have reformed. They're going to be lending a little bit of range support to their allies. But blue team, I don't know what happened over here, but the blue team has really pulled it back. And it looks like Dale has been completely destroyed here. Most of their army is in tatters, and what isn't still in the battlefield is now fleeing for the hills. Over on this far red team right wing, looks like we got some Variag warriors coming into the fight against Coastal Garrison. It's really just a mopping up operation at this point. Looks like some of the Kalkin's guardsmen just got routed off the field against some Vineland guards, so a very heavy elite unit here, and they're going to be giving it now to the Dragon's Wrath units. But that's just a small pocket of Dalish resistance. Elsewhere, the line has been thoroughly broken, and there's really not anything that they can do to stop the blue team from coming in on their flank. Although, mercifully for the red team, the Blues do not have a ton of infantry. They do have some bowmen here, mostly bowmen for the most part, and a little bit of cavalry, but there is a possibility for red team to still hold this wing. Now, over on this end, it looks like the Black Swan Defenders and the Black Swan Vanguard have beaten back the Kelduin Guildsmen for the most part. It looks like there's a couple units here. One of the very battered Kelduin Guildsmen who have now found some reinforcements in the form of the Vineland Wardens. This Kelduin Guildsmen are going to be taken to the battle to the Black Swan Defenders, who are now exhausted with these Black Swan Vanguards trying to chase down some of the Vineland Yard Patrollers. But I don't think they're going to have an opportunity. Blood Magpie now coming in with a supporting battalion of spears. They're going to pop themselves into a spear wall formation, and there is no way that this understrength unit of Black Swan Vanguards, down to about a third of its original strength, is going to be able to hack their way through those elite swordsmen. Let's see what we got over here. A unit of armed citizenry from Gondor, just kind of hanging around, not doing a whole lot. I guess that's not really all that big a deal, but it looks like the Uruk-hai have managed to effect kind of a flanking maneuver here with their half-orc axemen, backed up by some berserkers who have now been committed to the fray, alongside some Kelduin foresters. And that's a lot of AP to be bearing down on the Gondor line, but all things considered, they are holding very well. But there's a disaster here. So, Red Team has lost very heavily on both of the flanks at this point, and that is allowing the rest of the blue team's remaining forces to come in from the rear. It is really just the men of Gondor at this point who are still able to stand against their enemies. Got some champions of Farharad exhausted. They're going to be plodding in with their camels, charging into the rear of the Gondorians. Those Wardens of the White Tower are going to take that on the chin. And once battle is engaged, these guys should be able to turn around and do a serious amount of damage to them. The Wardens of the White Tower weren't occupied with anything from the front, so not a true hammer and anvil strike. Those champions of Farharad they probably could have picked a better target for sure. Let's take a look here. This tactical map. You can see that there's still a lot of Gondorians, but there are more and more blue team units that are able to come in. It looks like there's actually some crossbows. Some Uruk-hai crossbows have now moved in behind the Gondorian units. So I think this is going to be... I think this is it. This is a foregone conclusion now. Gondor will be able to stand for a little while, but with all of these reinforcements coming in, you can see some bowmen over there as well. Actually, no, hold on. Those are the Amrothian archers. I think they're trying to fire into the Spears of the Serpent, and they're going to succeed in shattering that unit, so it is going to begin to flee off the battlefield. And that's going to free up some Gondor reserves to move in against the Uruk-hai. Nice hammer and anvil strike here from the Knights of the Silver Swan. Good teamwork on the part of the Red Team, trying to pull things back from the brink, but I don't know. I mean, they have actually managed to free up a significant amount of their forces. Some Kelduin foresters now fleeing off the battlefield. The Uruk-hai infantry wavering as well. If they can roll up the Isengard line and free up the Gondorians, then this might be a fight that ultimately the Red Team is going to be able to win, but it's hard to say right now. It really does hang in the balance. Kelduin foresters here running afoul of the Wardens of the White Tower. Not going to go well for them at all. Oh, Kelduin forces being hacked down left and right. Not really much that these lightly armed men of the forest can do against an elite, well-armored and well-trained unit like the Wardens of the White Tower. Now, it's going to be a victory for Gondor as well, so it looks like Isengard has really run out of steam at this point, and it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the blue team here can do to try and pull this back. We got a couple minutes now left in the battle, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see exactly how this turns out. Gondor's still holding it down. There's still some Berserkers in there as well. Apparently the Berserkers can rout. I don't know if there's a way to give things locked morale, but to me it would be very, very strange indeed if a unit like the Berserkers were not able to fight to the death. So we have some reinforcements, some units that have rallied, some Uruk-hai infantry moving forward, and alongside some half-orc axemen occupying this section of the Gondorian line, while a unit of Uruk-hai attacks an out-of-position unit of the Wardens of the White Tower. Now, over here we got some White Hand Stormers, who are really giving it to the Black Swan Defenders, beating back some of the Red Team reinforcements. And now with all that ranged fire support from behind, ripping through the Black Swan Defenders, they are going to begin to break and flee. And now the encirclement can begin again. Actually, we have some routing here on the part of the Gondorians. Some sword infantry been fighting for a very long time. That's not going to be good, though. The Gondorian infantry here is shaken, and now being assailed from the rear by the White Hand Stormers. I think this is going to be it. For a minute there, I thought maybe the Red Team was going to be able to pull off a miraculous victory after losing on both ends, but it doesn't look like it. What do we got here? Some Dragon Skin units, nearly full health, moving in to replace some of the fallen Uruk-hai and Dorwinian units that have been beaten back by the Gondorians. I bet you Gondor is going to get a ton of kills. I can't wait to look at some of the Gondorian kill ratios at the end of the battle. Yeah, the envelopment here is basically complete. The Gondorians being assailed on all sides. Now starting to run out of numbers. Arrow fire just pouring in, ripping its way through the defenders, who just don't have much strength left to stand against their enemies. Gondor has done very well, but unfortunately their allies were beaten back quite handily. A full company of White Hand Stormers coming in from the rear. We got some wavering here. I think this is going to be the end for Gondor. We're really going to start to see some routing very, very soon. Even the Wardens of the White Tower now in the process of being broken, and indeed they are going to break. Just as a unit of Wrenshead Marksman comes in for the rear, and this is going to be complete and utter destruction for the brave Gondorians. Let's tab out there. There's really nothing, I think, left for Gondor at this point, except maybe one company of spears over here, which is being focused down with everything that the blue team has left that they can throw at them. Let's take a look there. A lot of casualties on the part of the blue team, but ultimately their decisive victories on the wings were really what won this for them. If Gondor's allies had managed to hold out for just a little bit longer, drain more of the resources, then maybe Gondor would have had an opportunity to break the Isengard center without being constantly swarmed by waves of reinforcements from both wings from several factions. So, very, very excellent battle. Thank you so much to Blood Magpie for sharing this with me. I hope you guys enjoyed it just as much as I did. But now, let's take a look at some of the kills here. Now, let's see. Mako, who was commanding Gondor, I want to see what he got. 173 on a unit of Wardens of the White Tower. Some of the Gondor swordsmen doing pretty well. Not nearly as devastating as I would have thought they would be, but Gondor doesn't really have a lot of cavalry in this case either. I guess, yeah, they're really relying on Dol Amroth to be their support unit while they really focused on their infantry. 3 units there of the Ithilien Rangers did pretty damn well for themselves. 43, a little bit unimpressive for that unit, but meh, otherwise. Let's see, across the way here. This is actually Blood Magpie's force, the one who sent in the replay. Paladins of Vintner Court getting 44 kills, 138 on those Vinland sentries, really paying for themselves. The other units did just kind of okay. Kildwyn Foresters, though, damn, and that punch up in the center, they really reaped a terrible, terrible toll of Gondorian lives. Some of his low-tier units, not so great. This is the Violent Winekeeper unit that got sandwiched between 2 elite units, or just 2 units. I think one of them was elite, one of them was militia. Vineland Wardens getting a decent amount of kills. Bowmen really doing a lot of work for this army. Cavalry, not so much. Violent Outriders, of course, with 61 kills. That's not bad. But let's take a look here at this this second matchup. We've got Dol Amroth and the Haradrim, champions of Farharat. Oh man, that cavalry really just cleaned up, especially these Lances of the Serpent. 226 kills. The Spears of the Serpent just doing kind of okay. Sword of the Serpent doing a little bit better. That unit getting 10 kills. Very, very unfortunate for them. Haradrim Swordsmen getting almost nothing done. Red Sand Marksmen did pretty well. And some Umbar Enforcers, looks like I missed them. I think they're like they have like dogs or something. I don't know. I guess I kind of missed them. Oh well, it happens. All the armors were kind of bumped up. I'm sure you guys will forgive me. Let's see. Cassius and Anubis commanding the Easterlings and Dale respectively. Cassius did pretty well with some of his East Run warbands. Those are levy units, so you know the fact that one of them got 55 kills is really nice. 300, nearly 300 kills on that Dragonskin unit. This Dragonskin unit getting 174. Variag Warriors, 170 or 178 for the Dragonskin, but 174 for the Variag Warriors. Very, very impressive. Dragon's Fire units doing really, really well as well. Of course, those are heavy bowmen, and they were firing basically the whole game, so of course they're going to get a ton of kills. And his cavalry did well in addition to that, so almost generally, Cassius's army it performed quite admirably, I would say. Let's pop onto Dale. Whitetown Warden's getting 218 kills, very impressive. A lot of these shipmen getting respectable kills here. 72, 89, and 73 is not bad. Vineland Guards really doing some serious work. Yeah, well over 170 apiece, but it just didn't seem to be enough. Now, I wish I had spent more time on that wing so we could figure out a little bit better what happened, but, you know, Red Team, they really struggled admirably over there, but I think it was probably the sheer weight of numbers, because there's not, of course, a ton of infantry here for the Dorwinian faction versus how many there are for Rune. But let's take a look at our final little matchup here. We got a unit of Uruk infantry. I think this is the one we saw getting shot at. They got 0 kills. The rest of them did okay in a prolonged fight against the Gondorians. The White Hand Stormers, though, doing some serious work, and that was casualties that the Gondorians really couldn't afford. All 3 of their units getting well over 100 kills. Berserkers doing extremely well as well. Oh, that Uruk crossbow actually went up to silver rank. It got so many kills. And their Horse Raiders didn't really do a lot, but that one unit was very bold and took down a lot of the Vineland archers and disrupted their skirmish fire for quite a while, which is invaluable in and of itself. Let's see here. This Dol Amroth force getting a lot with their cavalry. Their infantry was a little bit more mixed. This one unit of Swan Vanguards did really well. The rest of them not quite so well. Coastal Garrison, some lower tier units there. 93 for a low tier unit like that, very impressive. Emeraldian Archers definitely paying for themselves, and the Knights of the Silver Swan getting a bunch of kills as well. 31 and not great. 206 on this unit, however, more than makes up for it. But I think we got everything. Now let's take a look at this other unit here. I don't think we really paid attention to Peter Pineapple's Amroth army. Really high kills all the way across the board, pretty well for him, except for this couple units here. They only got 20. But that's it for the replay. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I will definitely be covering more Rise of Mordor in the future. Now, as for the next little while, I am going to be away on holidays in London from the 28th to the 8th of May, so you won't have any content in between those 2 dates, but I am going to try and get as much out to you guys as possible before I leave on holiday. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the battle, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye!